Welcome back, everybody. This is the third video for Unit 13. We left off in class with me not having enough time basically to do the work that I'm about to demonstrate, which is basically completing the project steps for this unit, which start on slide 100 of the PowerPoint. I'm on slide 99 right now, and you can see it up on my screen here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically follow the steps here in the PowerPoint one by one. So this is not going to be on screen most of the time. Maybe not at all. I'm going to whip it over to my other screen as a guide for myself. So the steps I'm about to take here are the steps that you need to actually complete the project work for this class. So really all you have to do is basically follow along. And then at the end of the whole process, I'm going to figure out what's the best way to submit it. And most likely it'll be a screenshot showing that you completed the work, and then a little bit of reflection on what was completed and what you learned from it. Um, just a little bit of quick recap. When we were in class on Monday evening, I attempted to install the Orange software through the Anaconda Navigator. Apparently, my Anaconda Navigator must be corrupted, and at this point, I really don't want to mess with the possible like uninstall, reinstall of it during the middle of the semester. But clearly, there's something wrong with it here on this machine. And I think probably the ultimate fix is to remove it completely, and then reinstall the whole thing from scratch. I did try installing Orange, and I discovered later that the reason it was taking so long is because it is a really large product that had like I think 38,000 files or something like that. A lot of little tiny Python files, basically, and it takes a lot of time to decompress those files. And and I was being impatient, and I was trying to do it during class time. That was not really a wise move. What I ended up doing, just so you guys are aware, is from their page here to get it to work. Um, I ended up downloading the portable version, which is a zip version. I end up throwing that on my data drive here. And then I just threw it in a folder, decompressed it, and it has a little shortcut. So this is where I launch it from. So I'm not launching it from the Navigator. If you were able to get it installed through Anaconda Navigator and it works from launching it there, you're doing better than I am. But this is what I'm doing. I do have the product up and running. I'm on a fairly robust machine, and it takes a while to launch and load. I don't know what the coding is behind it. I'm going to assume it's coded in Python, but I really don't know that. But obviously, this product does a lot of really high-end, powerful features. So when you launch it, it takes a little while to load up. So be patient. That was my experience on my machine, which is fairly robust. It's a pretty fast machine with lots of RAM and processing power, but it still took a while to load up. So if you have a really old machine, you are going to run into issues. Um, this ideally could work on any platform. You can see there's a Windows download and a Mac download, but it is recommended that you have a modern machine and you have a machine where you can install software. I did get some people saying that they are on work machines and they can't install anything, and that's not a good scenario for succeeding here. All right, so I do have Orange up and running right now, and I had been working with like some stuff here for examples. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to remove these items from the screen and start from scratch, right? That's going to be my approach. So I'm going to dig into that PowerPoint here, and I'm going to start with loading the data. So I'm going to follow the slides, and that's going to be, like I said, on my other screen. So it's just going to be cue cards for me. But when you're completing this project on your own, you should do the same thing. You should look at the slides, try to mimic what the slides are doing, maybe use my video in conjunction with that and complete your work. All right, so let's get Orange up on the screen here. I will go full screen with it. They want us to load up our data file, so I'm just going to drag a file widget over to the screen. And then I'm going to move on to slide 101 here, and I'm going to double click that, and I'm going to say okay to their message. And what I want to load up is I want to load up the insurance CSV file. And I just wanted to show you here that I do have that here. It will be attached to this assignment also, but you can grab it from here if you don't have it. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab the file and download, and it's pulling into my OS here. So it's in my downloads folder, and that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Right. And if I was like doing a larger scale project, I wouldn't leave it in a download folder. Just saying. All right. So now that I have that interface up here, I can go to my downloads, find that file, and open it. And basically, there is like this like file viewer here that they have where you can actually kind of look at it and figure out like information about the file. You will notice that my screen looks slightly different than the PowerPoint slide. That's because they've seemingly updated the product a little bit. What I'm seeing is that they have like an auto detection tool, but if it doesn't like find the right format for your file, you can force the format. So if it's an Excel file, this happens to be a CSV file. What I typically tell everybody is when you're working with CSV files, it's not a bad idea to just open the file and look inside of it and just see what's there. We did this the other day in class, and this is like this little matrix basically of a lot of ones and zeros of true false for all these different columns they have in here. And then they have listings of dollar amounts and whether it was fraud or not in column H, right? So that's going to be an area of focus for us. I'm going to go ahead and close that. But the recommendation is whenever you're working with an external file, take a look at it. Look inside, see what it contains. And once you have this all set here, this file is attached to this widget. All right, there's no buttons to press or anything like that. You can look at the data if you wish, but I'm just going to go ahead and close this. Right, so that's still attached there. And if you're not sure, you can double click again and take a look. Right. Next thing they want us to do is pull in a data table, and I'm going to do that. I'm just going to put it just slightly to the right here. And then as we learned earlier that you can connect these together, and I'm just clicking on this little right side of the file thing and dragging over to the left side of the data table. The right side of a widget is the output. The left side is the input. The flow is from left to right. So you got to take your file output and feed it into the data table. Then, of course, what you should do is you should double click it and take a look at your data, see how it came in. Now, notice I already looked at my data outside of the environment in Excel, but this tool does give you the ability to take a look directly at the data and see what you're dealing with, what kind of information you have, is the data clean, etc. They also have like this little visualization thing where you can add all these little like glyphs or whatever to it, but I'm going to leave that alone. All right. So this is the ability to view the data. I'm going to go ahead and close that. If you want, and notice that those come up as separate windows, and those separate windows can stay open while you're doing all this stuff. So if you want it open somewhere else, you can always bring it back in. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull in the select column feature. Right. And now what's interesting, because I'm on slide 105 right now, and it says to use the select column feature, which it's seemingly in the older version was in the data category, that has now moved to the transform category. And I don't know if this is a new category for them, but I'm just going to drop that on here. I'm going to connect the output of the file to the input of select columns, and then I'm going to go ahead and double click select columns. Now, the point of this tool is really to kind of start to target certain data aspects, right? And what we want to do is in this list here, we talked about this, we want to take the fraud reported item and move that to the target area, right? That's going to be our target variable. That's the one that we're going to analyze around. Right, because the whole point of this, remember, is to determine fraud for insurance claims. The next thing that we want to do is then we want to add the data sampler. I'm going to go ahead and close that window, by the way. You can see the data sampler is in the transform area also. And I'm following the diagram that they have on step 10, or excuse me, slide 107 at this point. So I'm going to connect the select columns to the data sampler. Then they are asking us to double click that. And from there, we get this little interface, right? And they're asking us to set the proportion of data to be 80%. So I'm moving the slider here till it's 80%. Um, I want you to notice that, they have different settings here for different reasons. There's no purpose right now to change any of this. But once you have this set, then we'll sample the data, and it does that process, and it's processing all the records uh, in the background. Now, just as kind of what's going on in the background here, we're using 80% of the data as our sample, then we have 20% left over for testing. It's really kind of the point of this. The next thing that we want to do is we want to pull in the test and score tool. And per the example in the slide, that's in the evaluate section, right? So test and score. So we're going to move that here. And look, I double click and it basically put it on there 3 times. So I'm gonna delete some of these. All right, we just need the first one, and once again, we'll connect them, and then we want to double click on the connection line this time, right? And then what happens is you get this little interface, and we want to make a couple of connections here. So we want to go from the data sample to the data, and then we want the remaining data to be our test data, right? So that was why we set the 80%, if you would recall. Once you have that set, then go ahead and say okay. And then you see like that little update that happens there. And if it's helpful for you, you can pull that apart. You can see like they have a verbal description of it available. Next, we want to set up the tree. The tree is in the model area here, or should be. There it is. So I'm going to pull in the tree, and I'm going to kind of follow the layout that they're using. And notice that I'm going to be connecting that now to here. And I find this interesting that they're connecting to the left side, the input, and they want us to double click this. And then of course that brings up another interface here. And what this allows us to do is tweak a bunch of these different parameters. And the parameters are used for like a bunch of different things. And you can, so in other words, you can choose the different aspects of each one of these little features here, and get it to suit your model. And I'm noticing in their graphic, the minimum number of instances and leaves, they have it set to 13. The second value I think is set to 3. It's really hard to read on the slide, frankly. And I'm not sure if that's relevant. The maximal tree depth is 100. Stop when the majority reaches 95%. So I am tempted here to change this number, but I want you to think about this. What's the situation for fraud? It's either fraud or it's not, right? So two choices, two instances is really appropriate. And I don't know if that needs to be expanded any. That might be a spot where we might want to tweak it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just click that. Um, I'm going to double click now test and score. So I'm on slide 113, and they say that you can see the result of it here, right? So in other words, it's processing the tree algorithm, and then it's giving us all these different values. Now, for right now, we don't know what these values mean because we haven't really learned machine learning yet, and what what each one of these little algorithms leads to. But if you look at the notes on slide 113, you can see some of this information. They also have the little test on test data button down here, which you can click. Um, yeah, and they're questioning here on the slide. Do you remember what all these acronyms mean? Because we did talk about them. But basically, the AUC is the area under the curve. CA is classification accuracy, and those are kind of the ones that we're looking for in principle. Next thing that we're going to add here is a confusion matrix. That's under the evaluate area. So I'm going to pull that in and I'm going to put that off to the right here. And then we connect test and score to confusion matrix. We'll give that a double click and take a look inside. Right. And then you can see values that are being generated as a result. And this will, maybe look at some of the data that we have on the slide compared to like what we're actually generating here. And the question on the slide is, how do you interpret the matrix? How much data is there? How much is accurate? How much is inaccurate? And I want you to remember, this is a table of accuracies and inaccuracies. That's open to interpretation. And once again, we're going to learn the process of what that means ultimately. Also in the evaluate area, there's an ROC analysis. So I'm going to pull that piece in, and I'm going to put that right above the confusion matrix. I'm going to put it like right up here. I'm going to connect from here to here. Then we want to click on the ROC analysis. And you can see we get this little interface that pops up here. And they have documentation that's available, and there's a link on slide 116 that talks about it. And right now we don't know what these numbers formally mean because we haven't once again learned the concepts, but you can see that it's indicative of some data based upon the data that we're feeding in through this model. As we look at this analysis, the objective of this graph is to get as near to the top left as possible. And I know the slide shows it like kind of more to the left than what mine is showing. Mine seems to go like between 0.33 and 0.5, which I don't think is great. But the point is that you want to move that line over as much as possible for good results. Another thing that we're going to add here, and this time we're going to go to the model area, we're going to add this couple of things here. So we're going to add an SVM to test and score. And so I'm just trying to find it here. There it is. All right, so we're going to drop that here, and then we're going to connect from the left side of test and score to SVM. Then, of course, we'll double click on test and score per the results. Now you can see that that model is now pointing to the SVM, right? And I'm checking the settings in here. And I'm putting in the cross validation. And then that's showing me a value here. And I have a very different value than what the example is, by the way, which I do find pretty interesting. So anyhow, that's irrelevant, really. Um, all right. So now they're asking us to go back to the confusion matrix, and now we're going to load another algorithm into that. And now, we see we have the tree, but now we're going to also um, look at the SVM here. And then, of course, you can play with the settings here once again. And once again, I'm not sure if these are the correct numbers or values here on these numbers, but you can basically switch between the tree and the SVM. And I just want you to notice that they kind of come up with the same values, but some of the numbers are a little bit different, by the way. All right, moving on. Now we want to go back to the ROC analysis, and I want you just basically to notice that the SVM numbers are also thrown in on the chart. Um, and the question that we get here is which one is doing a better job, the decision tree or the support vector machine? And I think the support vector machine is doing a better job because it's farther to the left. Remember, that's kind of like the goal. Next thing that we want to do is out of the evaluate area, and I want to expand that one. We're going to throw in a predictions thing here. You notice how that's a crystal ball. And with the predictions, we now want to connect the data sampler to the prediction. So the right side of data sampler to the left side of predictions. And if you need to move these to make the pathways clearer, just do that. We want to double click on the connection here, as indicated on slide 123, and now we're moving into slide 124. But what we want to do is we want to disconnect this, and now we want to connect the remaining data to the data and then say okay. And really what we're doing is now we're going to the our training data, we're switching it over to the test data basically. The next thing that we want to do is we want to connect the tree to the predictions. Then we also want to double click that connection. And I just want to make sure I'm doing the right settings here. Double click on the connection. Yeah, and I'm not really sure that we can change anything, but I think the point is that you can see that. All right, so at this point, I'm moving on. And I'm trying to follow the directions here. So I'm on slide 123. So double click the connection. All right, let me just repeat that action here. So we're going from the data sampler. And we switch the data. Okay, I'm just retracing a couple of steps. And then we're connecting tree to predictions, which we did. So then we go into that. Then we want to double click. Then we want to connect data sampler. Okay, so this is the piece that I was missing, to tree. And now you can see how that data path is now following. So we're feeding the data sample in. And now we want to double click predictions to bring up the little chart that it creates here. And this is kind of the culmination of it. And there's kind of like this thing that's happening basically. The first column is really indicating the predictions. Um, and the second column onwards is the data from the testing data. Um, all right, so the second column, which is gray, right? So that's the one there. That is the actual output. So you can compare your predicted output to the actual output to see if it's correct. So in other words, if they're indicating fraud here in red, the see if it matches up. And you'll notice here that like there is a case, for example, of it finding fraud, being fraud, right? And then cases of it finding fraud and it not being fraud. So that those are errors. So when you see the red marks here, that the data is different, basically. So it's all part of the modeling process. So this is the whole process, folks. And what I would ask that you guys do to earn the points for this one is as you're stepping through the tasks, right? And keep in mind, you can always go back. So if you want to look at your data table, you can show me that. But I want you to create screenshots of all this. So what'll happen is basically you create a blank document, and then you can kind of screenshot your steps. To screenshot in Windows, you can use the snipping tool to do that. And then you can just click new and then, select your stuff. And then as your screens pop up, you can just simply copy the content into your document, and then show me the steps. And basically what I want to see is I want to see this completed, and I want to see each one of the tables and connections that you do as you go through it. You can revisit all the steps through the slides or the video, and every key step that you take a screenshot, drop it into the document. And then when you're all done, you can submit the document. Another possibility is to save the file here in orange, and I'm a little less tempted to grab that, but you can do a save on it. I'm going to do that just to demonstrate, and I'm going to place it, of course, where I put all my normal stuff for this semester. If I can find it. Oops, wrong course. That's what happens when you teach too many courses to the same people. So it's the intro to AI, and then you probably have something like a folder for your homework, and then you can just call it whatever, AI project unit 13 or something like that. And if you want, you could submit that file if you want, but I'm not concerned with the file. I'm really much more concerned with the screenshot. Now, in the PowerPoint, and this is just to kind of finish stuff up, right? And so I'm going to stay in this kind of like pseudo presentation mode here. So we just completed this step. And then the next steps are basically looking at what these say. So you can go in there and you can change a bunch of different things. And these steps I do want you to kind of do on your own. You can go to all the little bullets that they mention here and go into little aspects and play with it a little bit. You're not going to break anything, by the way. And the data is going to stay what it is. But the point is to kind of explore the tool and see what it does, right? And this is really a very brief introduction to this type of tool. And not all the models that you're given are necessarily the best models. And I think we saw that with the tree and the SVM generally. And then, of course, we can talk about this, right? So like if you have like feelings about how that went, you can express that in the document. And that's really the goal here, right? And this is the work involved in this project. If you get stuck, look back at the slides or watch this video again, go step by step. And I'm also happy to answer any questions for my students. And you guys know how to get a hold of me, and we'll talk about it next week in class. So this video ends here.